No overtime without management approval? Great. Posted by Don't See Me. This one dates back a while to 2017, but I've been wanting to share it ever since, so apologies if it's a bit long. Background. I was in my third year of an accounting job that I absolutely hated, but I also hated the industry as a whole and was essentially using the position to bide my time as I learned a new skill to eventually jump to an entirely new career. My boss at the time, who I'll call Tia, was the shining example of this specific flavor of toxicity that I'd found sinking its teeth into most of the accounting departments that I've worked in. Imagine the power trip of middle management plus the prestige of managing multi-million-dollar transactions. She was the first accountant for the company when it started and had become the de facto choice for new highest position in the department every time the company's growth called for a departmental restructuring. The only thing I could determine was earning her these positions was her confidence and conviction in the way she determined things needed to be done, which C-Suite just ate right up, even paying for her to get whatever training or certification she needed to qualify for the new roles presented to her. In the meantime, she'd given me 3 consecutive annual reviews, scoring a solid 0% satisfaction rate each time, which was always enough to justify a 0% raise, but never enough to justify actually letting me go and putting me out of my misery. So at this point, I was fully checked out, especially after finding out that I'd become the lowest paid employee out of around 100, including interns and the front desk clerk. In the latest restructuring, Tia was not promoted to the new CFO role as the board wanted real experience, but was given a controller role while a new level of management was added between us. HR had also become its own department, no longer falling under accounting's purview. Tia didn't seem to like simultaneously becoming second in accounting's command while also losing control of HR. She convinced the company to send her to law school so she could eventually transition into some kind of Frankenstein-esque accounting and legal and HR position that would oversee essentially everything the company did outside of actual production. This required her to leave the office around 2 to 3 p.m. every afternoon to attend classes, making her unreachable until the evenings. The new management position that opened between us saw 3 to 4 employees join and leave for greener pastures over the course of a year and a half, but this story takes place while I was under the only manager I actually liked, who I'll call Kevin. I could see him doing what he could to advocate for me while still being forced by Tia to treat me the way she had previously treated me, and I could tell it made him feel awkward handing these decisions down my way. I respected his attempts to work with us, and he actually helped us create a functional and efficient department for a few glorious but short-lived months. Story. Suddenly, a bill was passed in the US stating that salaried employees making less than $40,000 a year would be eligible for overtime pay, taking effect later in the year. After 3 years of no raises, I was sitting at around $37,500 a year, making me eligible for the eventual overtime. Working in accounting, it's pretty much expected that you'll be working 50 to 60 hours a week, especially when closing out the monthly and quarterly and annual financials. However, after being shafted for so long and still being stuck with crap work that had little effect on the actual financials, I was actively giving them as close to 40 hours a week as possible, only staying behind if we'd gotten an important request towards the end of the day that Kevin begged me to take care of before leaving. I knew it would look a bit off if I suddenly started working a bunch of overtime after this change took place, so I planned on very slowly ramping up my hours over the preceding months to eventually take advantage of the extra pay. After 1 or 2 months, I was regularly putting in 45 to 55 hours a week, with most extra hours spent remoting into my home computer to practice programming, and looking forward to the income this new workflow would provide me. I guess they eventually caught on as Kevin pulled me into a conference room and presented me with a contract to sign stating that I wasn't to work any overtime without Tia's approval. For reasons that you'll see below, I quickly recognized this as a way to never have to work an extra hour for the rest of my tenure at the company. I signed it and immediately cut out all overtime, leaving at 4 p.m. that day. as I'd work through lunch. The next day, I stopped showing up early, started taking actual lunches, and could be heard peeling out of the lot at 5:01 every day. Kevin noticed my sudden lack of hours and tried to mention the contract not being in effect until the bill kicked in. I reminded him that we had a signed contract that failed to list a start or end date, so I considered it fully in effect. I could see the "oh crap" realization hit, but he begrudgingly accepted the loss. Now, I'll mention again that he was great, and this action had obviously come from Tia, and he was now stuck dealing with the repercussions the same as I was, so he didn't really fight me too hard on it. Later that week, an important client request came in at around 4:45. He asked if I could stay behind to work on it, and I asked if he had Tia's approval. This was his second "ah crap" moment, as unfortunately, due to her classes, Tia had become unreachable between 2 and 8 p.m. every weekday for the foreseeable future, and he didn't usually know he'd need extra work from me until after 4. Everything went exactly to plan as I got to enjoy a comfortable 40-hour week, throwing the contract back at them anytime they tried to squeeze even an extra minute out of my time. Now for the real kicker. Before the new bill took effect, a judge blocked it and shut it down entirely, meaning no more overtime pay for salaried employees. A crippling loss for the workforce, but I at least still got to enjoy my new schedule. Management tried to claw back my hours, but hey, I still have a contract that says I can't. Sorry guys. I was finally pulled into Tia's office, who tried to explain the lack of necessity for the overtime approval now that the overtime bill wouldn't be coming into play. I again reminded her that we had a signed contract with no dates and no mention of this being in relation to the impending overtime law. Then came my favorite part of the conversation. She said, "So yes, this is still a valid contract, but I want to be clear that it doesn't override your original employment contract here with us." And I said, "Oh, you mean the employment contract that states 40 hours a week?" And that was that. I was eventually let go a few months later after replying, because I don't, when a CFO mentioned people saying I look like I don't care about my job, but I'd finally built up my skills enough to find a position in my new industry while still enjoying my severance, so I consider it a win. 4 years later, I'm doing work that I enjoy from home, hanging out with my dogs with a calmer mind and a fatter wallet, all while they're still stressing over someone else's money. Oh man, OP, so you not only got taken advantage of with that overtime, when it came to be with that contract, you worked it in the best of your ability, crinkling it and crackling it around to work for you, taking advantage of Tia's absence in the day and Kevin helping you out how he could, and then when it finally came back, you got out just at the right time, held to that malicious compliance of sticking to the letter, and finally, when it all came to a head, you were able to be honest and truthful and just in that, hey, this whole bill thing, it's gone now. It was big then, it's gone now. Good timing, I nailed it, and now you're working somewhere you love, and everything has come to a win for you. Way to go, OP. Enjoy the game, Karen. Posted by Furtive Fox 88. This happened around 2013 or so. I had a part-time gig as event staff for a local university. I really enjoyed it because it brought in extra cash, broke up the monotony of my full-time retail job, I could request game days off well in advance, and it was a sign-up per gig, so I didn't have to work if I didn't want to. The city this university is in was not designed to handle the massive crowds that attend college football games nowadays. It's a super old city, like Victorian houses are everywhere, so traffic is a nightmare anywhere near it. Most people opt for shuttle buses or pay like $20 for game day parking at businesses and even people's driveways. But for those that have season tickets, they get special assigned parking areas on campus. On regular days, these areas are free for students and guests to use, but if you're in those areas on game day, your vehicle will be towed at your expense. So game day rolls around and I'm in charge of Lot D. Only tow trucks and anyone that has a D hanging from their rear view mirror gets in. A movable plastic barricade was the gateway. As always, traffic on campus becomes bumper to bumper as fans inch their way to their assigned lots. so slow in fact, that I can easily help point people in the right direction if they're lost. I kept a notepad and a map with me so I could jot down left, straight left, right for them without ever leaving my post. So everything is going smoothly. People are frazzled by the traffic, but very polite when talking to me throughout the day. I had just let in a vehicle and was moving the barricade back in place when a new, very ritzy white SUV whips in, preventing me from fully closing the entrance. I immediately noticed that their mirror sign thingy did not say D, but instead said Brad Pad. I walk to the driver's side window and see a young college-aged man with an "I'm so done with this crap" look on his face. In the back middle seat was his very annoyed father, and the passenger seat was occupied by his very ticked-off looking mother. I say, "Hi, y'all folks need some help?" Dad says, "Yeah, we can park right here, right?" I say, "I'm afraid not, sir. This is for D vehicles only, and your pass says Brad Pad." Dad says, "But our pass is blue, and this lot is blue on the map." Quick note about the map: parking areas were colored to make it easier to visually separate one lot from another, as the same colors never touched. There was like 3 blues, 3 orange, 2 yellow, and so on, but they had nothing to do with the parking areas at all. So I say, "Oh, the colors don't matter, sir. The only thing that matters is the letters, and I can't let you in without a D or your vehicle will be towed." Mom says, "Then where the heck are we supposed to park?" Son says, "Mom, calm down." And I say, "That's a very good question because you're the first Brad Pad I've seen. So let's see." I begin scanning the map. Dad jumps in, "This is freaking ridiculous." Son says, "Dad, he's just trying to help us." There is nothing on the map that says Brad Pad, but the basketball stadium is named Bradford So-and-so Stadium and indeed has an assigned parking area around it. No letter, just gray parking area. So I make an educated guess that that's where they are to park. Problem is, it's on the other side of campus in the opposite direction they came from. I say, "I believe you guys are supposed to be at the basketball stadium back that way. I'm not 100% sure, but that's your best bet." The son rested his head on the steering wheel in utter exasperation as the dad said, "The basketball stadium's in gray and our pass is blue." My reply, "Sir, the colors do not matter. I have no idea why the university thought colors were a good idea, but all that matters is what your pass says, not what color it is." The mom, screaming at me, shouts, "No, our pass is blue and that means we can park anywhere that's blue, so let us in now because you are wrong." The son snaps his head up and looks at his mom. "Mom, shut the heck up." She didn't acknowledge her son's outburst and just kept staring at me with a glare that could melt porcelain. I have dealt with rude customers before, but never been yelled at like that before. I was stunned. After about 5 seconds that felt like an eternity, the words just flowed out of me. Okay, just go on in." I said this in a very "okay, but you'll be sorry" tone. Mom says, "See, that's better." Now, what I meant to do was watch where they parked so I could wave over the son and tell him to get his parents into the stadium and come back to move the SUV because none of this was his fault at all. Poor guy just wanted to enjoy a nice game of football with his loved ones. However, at that moment, people that actually belonged in Lot D started arriving in rapid succession, and I had a job to do. I also didn't see where they parked. Sure enough, about 45 minutes later, a guy in a university golf cart pulls into the lot and starts walking around cars. 30 minutes after that, 3 tow trucks come rolling in, each with different company names on them. 2 student cars were removed, as well as a new ritzy white SUV. I watched as they towed it down the street, Brad Pad sign dangling from the rearview mirror. About 30 minutes after the game started, the barricade was taken down and I was picked up by an event staff truck so we could start picking up traffic cones, so I never got to see the unfettered rage those people had to be in when the game was over. Also, the university does not keep track of what company tows what vehicle, so I'm sure that was even more fuel for the fire. After that day, I found a better job that paid more for 40 hours and paid overtime, so that was my last event staff gig. To the college guy driving that day, if you're reading this, I am very sorry your SUV was towed, but I hope that your parents paid to get it out of hock for you and learned something that day. This is great, MC, because you warned them like, hey, I know this does not make complete and total sense, but this is the way it is. I can't help you. I can't change it. You really shouldn't park here. You push and push and push, push. And it's like, all right, you know what? Have at it. And you let them park. You maliciously comply. They get towed. And it's the son that's like, oh, these are my parents. They must be having a bad day or something. I don't know what it is, but poor dude had nothing to do with it. And then the parents are towed off. And can you just imagine that Karen's rage? I should have known we should have never parked here. We should have not parked in this lot. Why'd you all do it? When she was the one pushing for it the whole time. I can just see a Karen doing that, can't you? I bet you that's what happened after this story. OP, glad you got in a different spot with your gig. Sorry you had to deal with this, but great story. Way to go, OP. I wrecked the HOA and its Karens shirtless with my car? Click the video on the screen so you don't miss this insane story, and I'll see you there.